After a tough loss in game one, there are questions Miami need to answer, specifically, which was more at fault, Miami's defensive miscues or their lack of scoring? And what adjustments can the Heat make to steal game two? We'll answer that on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or you're on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And for daily Heat content, click on that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast app. Your favorite podcast now is a newsletter introducing the Locked On Heat daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com to start your day with the all-new free Locked On Heat newsletter. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be diving deeper into the Heat's Game 1 loss, talk about the adjustments that we want to see from them. But first, David, if you're Erik Spoelstra, you're thinking about what needs to be better in Game 2. Are you looking mostly at the offense or at the defense?
Well, we already know the answer to that when it comes to Erik Spoelstra. I think it's obviously going to be the focus is going to be shifting onto the defensive miscues. I think you look at exactly what happened in the fourth quarter. I mean, Miami was fairly competitive. And you look at the start of the game and the finish. And maybe it's easy to kind of just look at those two bookends and kind of draw your conclusions from that. But Miami got into a deficit early on. They made things competitive for the rest of the game. And then towards the end of the game, they allowed Ty Jerome to go off and have his scoring kind of tick up pretty substantially. And that being the case, I think Erik Spoelstra would want to focus on ways of making that 48 minutes of consistently high-level defense. So to answer your question, I think his focus is going to be on bringing a much more concerted defensive effort and then kind of just let the scoring come where it may. Like, obviously, they're going to need to put up some points. And I think that they did a pretty good job of that for the most part. At the same time, we've seen Miami's defense fuels their offense. And especially if you want to get things going for a number of players on this roster, if you can force Cleveland to turnovers, which isn't easy to do, or you can get those kind of defensive stops early in the shot clock, maybe ignite some transition offense, you'll get the points you need to beat Cleveland.
Yeah, I agree on the defensive part of it. I don't know that I care very much that Ty Jerome went off.
Huh.
You know, it's game one. It happened.
Yeah.
If that's going to happen, it's going to happen, right? To me, I'm looking less at the shots that Cleveland got. That's not much of my concern for Erik Spoelstra. That's focusing too much on what can we make Cleveland not do in terms of can we not get them. They're going to get good shots. The number one offense in the league. Their shot chart is so efficient. They are just an efficient machine. My thing, if I'm Erik Spoelstra, is what can we force them into? And that is the turnovers. That is getting steals. That's the stuff, because that's what connects the defense to the offense. The getting stops of it, I guess, is important, but it's more of just taking the ball away that I think if we're talking about Miami making this a series and potentially upsetting them in a game or two or even in this series, it has to be dramatic. And They have to win the possession battle. It starts there. And they lost the possession battle in this one by a decent margin. They need to create more turnovers. That's the number one thing I'm looking at. They had 7 turnovers. That's not enough. They only forced 7 turnovers in that game. They had 14. So that's a huge loss, right? They had twice as many turnovers as Cleveland did. You can't do that. The weird thing is Miami really scored well off transition in game 1. Pretty much every time they forced a turnover, they scored off of it. And that bodes well for them. If they can just create more turnovers, you're taking points off the board for Cleveland or potential points off the board for Cleveland, and you're creating points more often than not on the other end for yourself. How do you do that? I think is a fair question to ask. Can they blitz on those small pick and rolls that Cleveland loves to run, right? Where they have Sam Merrill or Ty Jerome or Darius Garland set a screen for Donovan Mitchell and kind of get Mitchell onto the matchup that they want, usually Tyler Herro. I think that's part of it. More full court pressure, especially right full and half court pressure right in the half court line. Make it so that maybe they a little over and back here or there. Just get them in a bind, get them on the baseline a little bit, get them on the sideline a little bit. More traps, more pressure, just more all out. And I know that's not what Miami always does.
No.
But they're also not always playing Cleveland. You know, like they've got to pull out some of the stops. And I just felt like they played it a little safe defensively in game one, where they need to be a little bit more aggressive. And we'll talk about this later, but that's also where Davion Mitchell comes in. That's a part of it. But it can't all just be Davion Mitchell either. These guys got to be more aggressive defensively.
I mean, it does a good job of, if you set that high trap or you kind of put pressure as they cross over the half court line, or maybe even that full court pressure that you mentioned, kind of denies the ability to set those high screen and rolls, and it kind of takes Jared Allen and Evan Mobley away from where they were so effective in keeping Miami away from the paint too. So, it would shift their offense a little bit more. I think, look, they're going to be difficult to stop. So it's just a matter of trying to make things difficult for them and keep them away from, as you said, getting into some comfortable spots that they were able to get into in game one. So I agree that you've got to do something. Like, you can't afford to go down 2-0 against a team as good as Cleveland. And I know you could always say, well, they did what they were supposed to. You come back home, and Miami hasn't been a very good home team. We've seen them lose a number of games at home, and this is not in the playoffs. This was during the regular season. I don't know that they're necessarily going to turn it up a notch once they come back to game 3 on Saturday. So
Cleveland got whatever they wanted in that game too. It's not even like the results are one thing. It's the process. To me, is the Cavs just never sweat in that game. It felt like, they kind of just got everything they wanted. So it's more than just getting the stops.
I don't know if I saw some comments there that maybe Cleveland didn't play their best game, or they could have been so much better. Yeah, maybe, but they weren't. Like, I know some players struggled, and you could say, well, maybe they struggled because Miami did a really good job defending them. I don't know that they didn't sweat. I think they understood the challenge. I really do look at it as the bookends in that sense. Like, they blew out Miami in the first quarter, or got that early lead there, and then what we saw from Ty Jerome to end the fourth, like that was it. Like, had they managed to avoid that, who knows? Like, I mean, you can't rewrite everything.
Was it 5 turnovers in the first quarter for Miami? So if you don't do that, and then you just don't let Ty Jerome go off, and the reason Jerome went off, and he attacked Tyler Herro. The last 3 baskets that Ty Jerome made in that fourth quarter were all on Tyler Herro. Yeah. And that's another adjustment that we'll get to here in a second. But you can't let Tyler Herro just end up on an island over and over again, which is also why I kind of like the trapping and blitzing on those pick and rolls a little bit more, because it just delays Cleveland. If you're trapping on those ball screens, it delays their ability to get in on their actions and start being pretty predatorial against Tyler Herro. Yeah. If you're delaying that action, you give Tyler Herro and other guys more time to switch out of those bad matchups and things like that. So I think that's another part of it. The other big part, when we're looking at the defense too, defensive rebounds. You got to rebound the ball. Cleveland got way too many offensive rebounds in that game. They had a 42% offensive rebound rate in that game. That's elite. Like, especially for you look at their size and you would assume that they're a really good offensive rebounding team. They're not. They're about middle of the pack as an offensive rebounding team. And they got 42% of the available offensive rebounds in that game, where they're usually around 29%. So Miami has to finish possessions defensively. That's the other thing too, is when Cleveland does miss the shot, you got to get that rebound and get out to the other end, because it's not just the steals that Miami thrived off of. They were really good, based on the metrics, pushing off of live rebounds. So I think that if you get those defensive rebounds and Bam's getting the ball and pushing it down the court, that's going to lead to good offense for Miami too. So I think you control the controllables defensively. If Ty Jerome goes off, he goes off. You know what I mean? Like, that's just going to happen. Cleveland is so... If it's Ty Jerome one game, it could be Sam Merrill the next game. It's going to happen. If it happens, it's going to happen. But you got to control the controllables, which is create some stuff defensively, try to win the possession battle, or at least control it, defensive rebound, and then just at least give yourself a chance, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point about Jerome, because I also saw a lot of feedback about that. Like, Jerome wasn't he was a difference maker, but at the same time, like, it could have been just as well, it could have been anybody else on that roster. And that, Mobley struggled to some degree. Jared Allen didn't have a monster game. Mitchell, as good as he was we've seen him do better. Like, I mean, he's had bigger, more productive nights, and he wound up only playing 33 minutes, but they could have gotten much more production out of their two all-stars, or I mean, depending on how you view Mobley too. So it's just I'm really curious and excited to see what happens in game 2, because it's we see this all the time. Like, what happens in game 1 doesn't work out the way you want it to, and yet Miami historically has done a pretty good job of finding ways to kind of counter and make adjustments and things of that sort. And I don't know exactly what Eric Spoelstra, if anything, might have up his sleeve. But again, if you're disregarding the idea that you're an 8th seed and that you're an underdog and that you don't have any chance in the series, and I think that's where Spo's mentality is at, because, well, that's just where he's always been at. If that's the case, then what does he do to maximize this group and the potential lineups that he can tinker with and adjust so that he can create some sort of an advantage against some really good Cavaliers too?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. You can go into three-pointers, steals, assists, rebounds. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after a game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today, but only when you go visit FanDuel.com. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show, like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Should also be noted, David, this was Miami's 3rd game in 5 nights, all on the road. Tough games, playoff atmosphere games, right? I think that factored into just how tired they looked, especially at the end of this game. Cleveland obviously had a week off. They didn't have to deal with the play-in tournament. And in terms of the rust versus the rest, I think that is so much overstated most of the time. It's also kind of hard to figure out, because usually the team with the rest is also the way better team than the team.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so, but yeah, I obviously Cleveland was fresh in that game. I don't think that there's a team in the playoffs right now that needed more of a break than Miami did. And the fact that game 2 isn't until Wednesday night, that's a pretty good break in the schedule for the Heat. So I'd expect them at the very least to look a little bit better physically, a little bit more fresh physically in game 2 than they did in game 1. So maybe there's that adjustment. So let's dive into some of the adjustment. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say they didn't look fatigued to me though. Like, it's possible that they were feeling it and they're just kind of trying to truck through it, as superstar athletes tend to do. And yet I didn't notice them being particularly sluggish at any point. Maybe
I saw it from Herro. Okay. And maybe that had nothing to do with the 3 and the 5 nights. Maybe it was just that they were picking on him every single defensive possession.
Yeah.
It was probably both things. I thought Wiggins didn't look great. There was just a number of closeouts that he was either slow or not making. And I think you see that show up in the defensive rebounding, right? Part of the reason why you get out-rebounded is because Cleveland is just jumping a little bit higher than you, maybe. They're a little bit stronger. But look, let's dive into some of the adjustments. I have a bunch of adjustments here that I want to get into. I know you do as well. But before we get into the specifics, sometimes the biggest adjustment is just play better. And I think that is a really big part of this. Getting into your actions with a little bit more urgency, setting harder screens, rebounding the ball more, not turning it over as much. All of these things are obviously, we've talked about them now for 2 episodes or an episode and a half now. Those things got to get done. Beyond all of that, I do think you were talking about it going into at the end of last segment. What is Eric Spoelstra? He is a master tactician. Like, this is what Spo lives for, is the in-between game adjustments in the playoffs. This is what makes Spo the best coach in the NBA. This is where he gets a chance to shine, right? So he's going to have something. We could start at a lot of different spots here in terms of the adjustments. Here's the number one thing I want to see beyond any starting lineup changes. They need to change their offense, I think. We talked about some of the defensive adjustments. Offensively, I think they need to steal a book out of Cleveland, stealing a page out of Cleveland's playbook here.
Okay.
Cleveland ran so many small pick and rolls to get Tyler Herro on an island against one of their better ball handlers, and it just victimized Tyler Herro. And you just knew every time down the court what Cleveland wanted to accomplish. Get Tyler Herro in a screen and attack him. And if he wasn't on the court, do it to Duncan Robinson. If he wasn't on the court, do it to Alec Burks. Like whoever the weak link was, they were going to attack that player. On the other side, I don't know what Miami was trying to accomplish offensively. It was, hey, Tyler, here's the ball. I don't know, shoot it. Kind of felt like the offensive play call. And so I looked at the numbers. They basically ran zero. They got 0 screen assists from any of their guards in that game. Cleveland had 7. Cleveland got 15 points created off of screens set by a small in that game. Miami got 0. That's a 15-0 margin in that specific type of play, which is not exactly how basketball works. But I'm just telling you, Cleveland had so much success with it, and Miami never even tried it. And you look at the players on Cleveland that you have to attack. You're not trying to attack Evan Mobley. You're not trying to attack Jarrett Allen. I know Tyler Herro likes the screens with Bam or with Khalil Ware because those guys, first of all, set really good screens, Bam in particular. And so that kind of creates just that enough space for him to get into that floater and all that kind of stuff that he likes. I think they got to switch that up. I think they got to have Davion Mitchell, Alec Burks, Andrew Wiggins, these other guys out there, Duncan Robinson, setting those screens for Tyler Herro. I think they have to have Tyler Herro setting screens for Wiggins and for Bam Adebayo. I think they've got to run a lot more inverted pick and roll to get Cleveland's weaker defenders, whether it's Darius Garland, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill. Those guys were they were let off the hook the entire game. They never attacked those guys, hardly ever. And I think they have to do a way better job of being purposeful in attacking that. Because every time they did attack it, it just sort of was like, oh, wow, Merrill's on Wiggins. Just throw him the ball really quick and attack that matchup with like a post-entry pass, which is fine. Yep. Do that too. But it feels like that was sort of like found money in between the cushions where they have to like actively be out there making money, like doing the thing that gets the matchups that you want early in the shot clock. So that's the one adjustment offensively that I want to see. More small pick and rolls, inverted pick and rolls with Bam and Wiggins ball handling and having Herro set those screens. And I think that'll open things up for them.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was at. I wanted to see Bam kind of free up a little bit more in this offense. And to that end, I thought setting screens for him to get those going, get those mismatches, because if Mobley's a very versatile defender. Allen is pretty solid too. But I think you have the opportunity for Bam to create that mismatch, getting up on, if he's defended by Garland and or Mitchell or somebody else along those lines, who knows where it could be. But just to get them to foul trouble, to use his speed, his strength, I think they'll have to foul in those situations. Now, I think Bam is also somewhat polished enough so he can take advantage of those as if he's in the ball handler situation there, and if he's playing that role where he can avoid fouling or creating the offensive foul. Conversely, I think given his passing skills, he can also look to get, again, if he's in the ball handler role there, and let's say Tyler hits that screen or somebody hits that screen, with his passing ability, he can get those, get the ball over to whoever is setting the screen for him.
Right.
And that allows them to be a little bit more comfortable in getting their spot offensively. Maybe they can get
now you've got Herro being guarded by Jarrett Allen out on the perimeter, and that's a spot Herro likes.
Yes, exactly. So I think you got to do something. You got to tweak it. Just don't see that creativity very often. Not necessarily from Spo, but just in general. Like I think we've got to see something. You got to do something differently and wildly, and I think it works out really well given the kind of versatility that these players show.
And I want to see Wiggins in that spot too.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, Spo talks about all the time, getting Wiggins going downhill. There you go. Have Herro set the screen, or whoever has again, you've got to be predatorial. Where's Sam Merrill? Where's Garland? Who are those guys guarding? Have that player come up, set the screen, have Wiggins just attack that guy. Now he's going downhill. He's drawing fouls. He's getting into the paint, and then he's spraying out the shooters, and then you kind of unlock everything. Again, it's not terribly creative what we're talking about. It happens all across the league. Tyler Herro is a decent screen setter at his position. His gravity attracts a lot in those spots. We have seen the Heat do this before. They just didn't do it in this game, which to me was just odd. I don't know if it was we won Friday night, we had 24 hours to game plan, and then we're going to game one. But having this kind of break, that benefits Eric Spoelstra quite a bit. And I know that he's going to be pulling these levers. Like, these are just obvious things. If I can figure it out, obviously he's doing it too. One other thing that I wanted to point out, this is not as much of an adjustment, but something to keep an eye on. Tyler Herro ran 3 miles in that game. That's about a quarter mile more than he runs in a normal game. That's quite a bit over the course of a basketball game. I only point that out because he was working. And I don't know what the adjustment is, but he has to do that less because he can't be doing that the entire game. He's going to be worn out by the end of the game and certainly by the end of the series if that's what he's doing. So part of that was just Cleveland making him run in circles, but another part of it was just Herro trying to get free with all the face guarding and stuff like that that was happening with him too. So they got to figure out a way for Herro to work a little bit less so that he can do more.
Yeah, and that I think that comes with potential lineup changes that I'm sure you're going to talk about, is some of those adjustments that you made. Like, if you can get different player personnel in there to kind of handle the ball a little bit more, make things a little bit easier for Tyler. He can play a little bit more off ball. He doesn't necessarily have to be running around all the time. He's not necessarily, I don't think he's suited for that Rip Hamilton style game where he's kind of constantly on the move or anything like that. So,
especially when he's your primary scorer. That was the difference with Rip Hamilton. He was just sort of like he was a number 2 or a number 3 on those teams. You just don't want any of your players running 3 miles a game. That's insane. No. That would have led the league in the end. That's a lot, right? All right. 2 teases in a row, David. Lineup changes. Talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The playoffs are here as the Heat are facing the Cleveland Cavaliers. Can they push the Cavs in the playoffs? Stay in the know with the Locked On Heat podcast newsletter. Get a chance to win one of these amazing prizes by subscribing. You can win a $2,500 Best Buy gift card to upgrade your Sports Cave setup, maybe a $300 Game Time gift card to go one of these games, or a $200 Fanatics gift card to get some great merchandise. Sign up between April 7th and April 30th this year to be entered. Our Heat newsletter delivers real-time updates, expert analysis, and playoff insights tailored for you. Subscribe now for free to the Locked On Heat podcast newsletter. Stay ahead as the season unfolds. Subscribe today. Click the link in the description to enter. The other adjustment here, and this is the obvious one. It's time to start Davion Mitchell. We're done here. It was cute. The Alec Burks thing, it was nice. Spo has been pretty stubborn, and I don't even know if I can blame him for it because obviously they made it through the play-in tournament. I don't know that they are losing games in the play-in tournament if Davion Mitchell isn't out there to start these games, but it is very clear now. Mitchell has to be out there from the very beginning of this game. And I'll go back to what we talked about at the beginning, David. It's that defensive pressure, that ability to pick up full court, to be disruptive. Davion Mitchell is a tone setter on the defensive end. And as professional as Alec Burks is, I don't think anybody would ever accuse him of setting a tone in any way. Like, he is not a tone setter, right? He is a professional, do-my-jobber guy. Davion Mitchell is a tone setter. And that's what they're going to need in this series, is to establish the physicality, the disruptive defensive stuff. He had he had 4 steals against the Cavs. Mm-hmm. No, I'm sorry, that's Donovan Mitchell. He had 0 steals against the Cavs. 1 steal. All right, I'll get this right eventually. He had 1 steal against the Cavaliers. He needs to have 2, 3. Haywood Highsmith needs to be more involved and all that kind of stuff too. But Mitchell, he played 34 minutes in this game. Bam played 39. Wiggins played 38. Tyler played 37. Davion Mitchell's got to be up there with those guys.
Yeah, the minutes, exactly right. He played a substantial amount. It's not like he wasn't, coming off the bench. He doesn't get kind of the same kind of amount of playing time. He outplayed Khalil Ware. He outplayed Alec Burks in terms of total minutes. Like, I think more than both of them combined. Having said that, like, he's a complementary player, not only because of his defensive intensity, but he's good enough as a scorer now. Like, his shooting has been such a benefit for Miami, not just during the regular season, but also in the past playing games and even in game 1, that he's going to be an advantage out there for Miami. So you worry about who you bring off the bench at some other point, but you've got to be able to set a tone early on. And that being the case, you want to be able to create whatever advantage you can. Like, that seems to be a recurring theme in our conversation here, but I think Mitchell certainly adds something to the table that Alec Burks does not. And you're not sacrificing much. Like, I mean, he outscored him, put a pretty wide margin. And given how good his shooting is, even if you're not able to get those shots off as easily, I think his ability to use his speed and quickness to be able to get into the paint and create opportunities for Bam or cutting Wiggins or something along those lines. Like, again, those are easy baskets that you can generate.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, easy in the context of what we're talking about, but certainly easier than whatever looks that we're getting or non-existent looks that they were getting at the rim in game one. You want to be able to do something. Who has the same speed as Davion does to be able to get into the painted area and attack, a Mobley or an Allen? Nobody. And so that's why he was the only one who was really able to attack with impunity and be able to get the kinds of open looks at the rim that nobody else was able to. So you've got to be able to try to find a way to generate more offense. And again, ironically enough, it also comes from somebody who happens to be one of your best defenders in Mitchell.
Yeah, he's just flatly been one of Miami's best two-way players, if not their best perimeter two-way player, right, over this part of the season. Also, going back to the small pick and roll stuff, who I'd really feel good about setting a screen? Davion Mitchell and that brick wall of a body. Like, that guy is a fire hydrant. He'll just that's a better screen setter body than Alec Burks have. Here's the other thing too. I understand that Spo likes Burks for his spacing and the shooting and the stuff. And Davion Mitchell is mostly left open, even though he's making the shots. But he's making the shots, and that's really important. Cleveland's not afraid of Alec Burks. They had Darius Garland as his primary defender. They're not afraid of him. They're hiding Garland on Burks. So you're not really getting the spacing part of it. Of him either. They are scared of Duncan Robinson, who also played 15 minutes in this game, and Alec Burks played 15 minutes in the game. I would take those Burks minutes and redistribute some of those to Duncan Robinson, who has legitimate gravity on the perimeter. Redistribute those minutes to Duncan. Look, if there's going to be moments for Alec Burks in this series. I don't know that they need to be planned. I think it's, hey, Tyler's not making any shots, Davion's not making shots, Duncan's not making shots. Let's just Alec Burks second half. Let's see what he's got. And Alec Burks is awesome in that role. Like, that's what he was made to do as a basketball player. League. Yeah. Right. That's why he's still in the league. It's fine if he does that again. He does not have to be in the starting lineup. So I would go Davion Mitchell, Tyler Herro, and the rest of the starters are what they are. And then, by the way, if you take Alec Burks out, that could free up other options in the starting lineup, or you just kind of run 7 guys instead of 8 or 9 guys. And I think that would be fine too, given that the talent discrepancy is what it is. You kind of just want your best 6 or 7 guys always out there for really big minutes, because that's really might be the only chance you have in this series. Are there any other adjustments that you want to get to?
Maybe I'm crazy. I just want to see Jovic play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's ready, and obviously, we're not going to be privy to that. But he looks like he's capable. He looks able-bodied at this point. I just think, again, we're talking about creating advantages. The 6'11" young kid who can make crazy passes and can't stretch the floor and was growing as a defender and as a rebounder, and even showed some shot blocking ability at some point, and can bring the ball up and create transition opportunities. Yeah, you kind of want to see that guy out there, especially when your season's on the line here. I mean, this isn't do or die. This isn't Game 7, but it might as well be for all intents and purposes. It really is. It's if you go down to Miami down 0-2. Yeah, that's not exactly the place you want to be against a 64-win Cleveland Cavaliers team. So yeah, show Jovic some love, get him out there, get him some opportunity. If he's ready, why not? Like, I mean, even if he costs somebody else some playing time or some minutes, or especially again, Alec Burks. Like, you didn't bring in Alec Burks to have your season hinge on whether or not he's got it going for.
When you signed him to a minimum contract, you weren't envisioning starting in the playoff series. But you did envision Jovic being a starter to begin the season.
Or else you would have drafted him, right?
Terry Rozier is questionable for the game after suffering an injury during a volunteer workout. But not that it matters, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it is news. Not disagreeing with you on the Jovic piece. Just going to bring up another name, though. Pelle Larsson.
Okay.
Maybe there's an opportunity there, especially if Cleveland's going to go small. Like, there were those lineups with 4 shooters out there.
Mm-hmm.
You could try to overplay them with size. Pelle Larsson, with his cutting, his ability to just sort of find points and create stuff, I would be interested in seeing him, especially, I know the outside shot is pretty inconsistent with him, and he is pretty foul prone, and I'd be kind of terrified of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland pulling him into actions and stuff like that. But it wouldn't be planned minutes for Pelle Larsson, but I wouldn't hate seeing him out there either. if they kind of run into a wall offensively and they just need to try something.
That kid's got moxie. Like, you
right.
know what? Put him out there. Like,
We
seriously,
did talk
that
about
kid-
being meaner than them.
Yes, like he's not afraid of the moment. I don't know what it is about his individual makeup or anything like that, but he doesn't play like a rookie. We saw him in the win against Boston, like when Miami was under 6-game win streak. Like, he didn't back down from anybody. He doesn't care. So Donovan Mitchell isn't shoving him out of the way he did Duncan Robinson. At least I don't think so. I don't think Darius Garland's going to have much to say against Pelle Larsson. Like, I think you know what? We're calling for a fight. You want to upset something? You want to throw something? You want to put a little monkey wrench into the whole camaraderie issue or how comfortable Cleveland looked in game 2? I think
Pelle Larsson goon squad. I like that. Yeah. We need a new Udonis Haslem. I don't think anybody pinned Larsson for him, but who knows?
I think he's up for the challenge. I mean, I could see him. Like, he's going to defend. He's going to get one steal on one of those star level players, and then they're going to kind of start talking smack. And then that's the case where it just kind of goes back and forth. And since he's not going to back down, that's all the incentive they need. Yeah, it could result in a 45-point barrage from Donovan Mitchell, but heck, that's a potential thing anyway.
Right.
You might as well try to create whatever advantage you can.
Those are the adjustments. I'm out. That's what I think it is. I'd be careful. One last note. I'm just a little careful about the zone. I know it worked for a stretch there, but it felt like Cleveland figured it out pretty quick. I don't know that
I had more zone in my notes, but it's
more zone. Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like Cleveland figured it out, but not without the zone, right? Sprinkle it in, but I don't know that they're going to be able to play like 4 or 5 straight minutes the way they did in the last game with it.
That's fair.
But yeah, surprise them with it. Kind of do it that way. We'll see what happens. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app, and tune in tomorrow for our special crossover episode with Locked On Cavs.